If I'm looking for drama, a money and finance web forum is not my go-to. But several years ago, I stumbled upon a post by a woman who asked an innocent enough question. Stay-at-home moms, what do you list as your occupation on your tax returns? A virtual hurricane of responses commenced. Replies from the well-meaning non-trolls ranged from homemaker to household manager to housewife to unemployed or not applicable. One related to the dilemma and said, stay-at-home mom makes it sound like one's whole existence is based on being a baby factory. Housewife makes it sound like caring for the husband is one's whole world. Homemaker reflects the pressure of upkeeping. Some people had surprisingly stronger and ridiculously mean opinions, like the one who said, seriously, since you bring in absolutely no income at all caps, what difference does it make what you call yourself? And then there was a brief yet oh so patronizing response, you're not employed, honey. Hoo-wee, as you can imagine, I have a few strong opinions of my own about those awful comments. And, as you also could have guessed, I decided to ask a bunch of moms to help her out and list their own job title preferences.
So I've always thought of myself as a stay-at-home mom.
I kind of like homemaker.
I liked the title homemaker.
I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Mom, just plain mom.
Stay-at-home mom with an online business.
I'm a slay-at-home mom.
This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Before we get started, I'd like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. BetterHelp is therapy that feels like it was designed for busy moms. There are a lot of things that stand in the way of moms taking care of ourselves and getting the therapy we often need. Scheduling an appointment, arranging a babysitter, even finding the time to drive to an office building. With BetterHelp, all those obstacles disappear. It's professional therapy done securely online. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional therapy. The service is available for clients worldwide, no matter where you live, so even if you don't have a lot of local resources, you get access to over 20,000 experts. BetterHelp is committed to finding the right therapeutic match for you, and it's easy and free to change therapists if not. You can also log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You'll get a timely and thoughtful response, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to find that babysitter. You can even schedule it during nap time. Plus, BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional offline therapy and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit BetterHelp.com, that's BetterHelp, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. There's a special offer for How She Mom listeners. You can get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/HowSheMoms. This is not an episode about justifying or validating any given career choice for mothers, so I'm not going to spend time making those arguments or responding to the trolls from the intro. I'm just going to start with a few assumptions. Number 1, whatever you call it, taking care of children and managing a home full-time is a valid career choice, not just a default and not unemployment. It is hard work. It provides real financial returns for a family. Number 2, of course, this career is also a valid option for fathers, which is increasingly more common. Number 3, women and men who have additional employment also take care of children and manage their homes. Number 4, each family, each mother, and each father has the right to choose what works best for them in any given season. Ideally, this choice should be free of judgment from others. Now that we've laid that foundation, let's talk about what this episode is about. Nomenclature. We're going to look at the history of what we have called this profession of taking care of children and managing a home and family. And we're going to examine the pros and cons for some of our options for job titles. Does it matter what we call ourselves? That's a question I've been asking for the 3 years I've been working on this episode. It's like I plucked a daisy and I keep going back and forth. Does it matter? Does it not? Does it matter? Does it not? To some people, including my own mother, it doesn't. When I asked her, she said,
Oh, I don't care what the heck they call me. I've had a lot of people that get offended when they're called certain things, but I've never gotten offended by anything that somebody's called me. I just know that people don't mean to offend, and I'm happy to be a stay-at-home mom or a domestic engineer, whatever they want to call me. I just love my job.
But to other moms I talk to, it matters very much what you write down on that form in the doctor's office or what you tell people at a party when they ask you what you do. As a lover of precise language, I tend to agree with them. So I asked dozens of moms and dads what terms they preferred. Then I researched the history of words like housewife, homemaker, and stay-at-home mom. I listened to podcasts about the topics, and I read and pinned dozens of articles looking up equivalents in different languages, and even tried my hand at the German art of making up compound words, like Kinderguide. I vowed that I would not rest until I found or coined the perfect word. I had strict requirements. It had to be gender neutral, especially since more and more men are choosing this career path. It had to encompass both taking care of kids and managing a house. It had to have a good social media abbreviation, and no hyperbolic or twee euphemisms allowed. However, in my search for the one right word, I forgot the main premise of How She Moms. There is no one answer. We each get to choose the job title that we like best, and we may decide to use different job titles for ourselves in different social and professional situations. So, instead of me choosing for you, let's talk through some of the options, and then you can choose for yourself what word or words you want to use in true How She Moms style. Let's start with the historically oldest term for a person whose primary occupation is to manage a home: housewife. The first recorded use of this term was in 1225, although it was first pronounced more like huswife or hussif, and sometimes even shortened to hussy, until that word sashayed off to live a scandalous life of its own in the 1600s. The literal translation means housewoman, although there are some historical examples of the term hussif being used for men who run a house as well as women. Interestingly, the word husband translates to householder, not houseman, since of course we know that historically the man was legally the only one who was allowed to own property in many cultures. In the U.S., for example, women weren't allowed to own property until 1848, and the law wasn't widely recognized until the early 1900s. A 2019 study by the World Bank Group found that 75 world economies still restrict women's right to hold property to some extent. But I digress. Most of the historical uses of the term housewife are pretty positive, with some notable exceptions that should remain historical. See hussy. But now the term housewife is generally considered outdated. Even before the TV series, the term housewife smacked of desperation, inferiority, and servitude. J.K. Rowling saw it too, adapting it to poor Dobby and the other house elves, enslaved and desperate for a sock to call their own. I know I said I was going to share both pros and cons, but I don't really see many pros about rehabilitating this outdated term. Option 2 is homemaker. The term homemaker came on the scene in 1876. It puttered around for a while until gaining traction in the 1970s, especially when my new hero, First Lady Betty Ford, started advocating for it. Here's an excerpt from an interview in a 1976 issue of Good Housekeeping, written by a woman with the unique name of Winzola McClendon. She writes, "As First Lady, Betty Ford is very concerned about the lack of appreciation for the role of women as homemakers, a word she likes better than housewife, because that's what you're doing, making a home. It's a concern she shares with her husband. Earlier this year, President Ford told a group of future homemakers of America, 'I regret that some people in this country have disparaged and demeaned the role of the homemaker. Homemaking is not out of date, and I reject such accusations.'" Betty puts it another way. She said, "Homemakers are the backbone of our society. They're the ones who influence young people. Family culture is the very beginning of everything." But Betty didn't take sides. She made it clear that a woman should be free to choose either a career outside or inside the home, and should be respected for both. She says, "We have to take the just out of just a housewife and show our pride in having made the home and family our life's work. What's this about the liberated woman being a career woman? A liberated woman is one who feels confident in herself and is happy in what she is doing. A woman who is satisfied with her life at home is just as liberated as a woman with a career outside the home. What is important is that a person has the option to decide the direction of her own life and that she makes the decision herself, without pressures restricting her choice." Way to go, Betty! The rest of the article is fascinating and well worth the read, especially the part where she talks about potential options for compensation for homemakers. I also love the part where it talks about Betty doing cartwheels and handstands with her kids' Cub Scout troop. Interestingly, while the term homemaker felt like a forward-thinking name to Betty Ford and her contemporaries, it has taken on some of the same stigmas of the term housewife in our era. Another drawback to the word homemaker is that, at least culturally, it puts more emphasis on domestic skills like cooking, cleaning, and perhaps home aesthetics than parenting. Brooke Romney is a mother of 4 boys. For years, taking care of them was her full-time gig until they all started school. Now she writes part-time as well, often about motherhood, and very beautifully, I might add. You can find her writing at brookeromney.com. As someone who shares my love for words, I wondered how she felt about the word homemaker.
Well, if anyone had to say that I was a homemaker, I would be failing at that because I am less good at the homemaking things and I am really great at the motherhood things. So I prefer being identified as my role as a mother. There were things that I did to make my home, but homemaker is less of something that I feel like I am called to do, and motherhood is something that I feel very called to do. And so, even now I'm a working mother. Before I was staying at home as a mother. And I think both titles really identify with me because both include mother.
Kendra Hennessy is the host of one of my favorite podcasts, Mother Like a Boss. The tagline is making fun out of mom life and putting reluctant homemakers back in the driver's seat of motherhood. I loved episode 128 of her podcast entitled Why We Need Homemaking Now More Than Ever. In these clips from that episode, she shares how she's grown to fully embrace the term homemaker and why she's on a mission to rehabilitate it and get rid of the notion that it's an old-fashioned concept.
I firmly believe that homemaking is feminist. To me, in my life, feminism is about choice and having the choice, having the ability to choose. Now, I also want to go back a little bit and say that I didn't always love the word homemaking. I actually really rejected it in the beginning of my business. A few people, when they found out what I did, they were like, oh, so you kind of teach like homemaking. And I was like, listen, I'm going to stop you right there. I absolutely do not teach homemaking. That's ridiculous. I'm not Martha Stewart. I'm not Better Homes and Gardens. Like, I'm not teaching people how to go out and shop for candles and throw pillows and make the best like tea sandwiches for their friends. These are the ideas that I had of what homemaking traditionally was, because again, I had always come up against those myths, those lies about what homemaking were, and I just sort of believed them. But when I really started to dig in to what Mother Like a Boss was all about and what I was teaching, I realized this is homemaking. This is what homemaking is.
I love how Kendra really broadens the definition of the word homemaker.
Home management is a component of homemaking. It's something we do within homemaking. But homemaking is cultivating the space, and not just, notice that I didn't say the rooms, the space, the physical space, the mental space, the emotional space, all of those spaces that aren't just confined within your walls, they're carried with us when we leave the home.
The other bonus to the word homemaker is that it's inherently gender neutral, although it might take some significant cultural work for men to get more comfortable using it. But hey, we've successfully done it with the word nurse. I haven't heard anyone use the term male nurse since the movie Meet the Parents. Kendra has started working on this too.
When we think of homemakers, we think of women. And the truth is, I like to think of myself as a homemaker, but my husband is just as much of a homemaker, just in a different way. My children are participants in homemaking. I wouldn't necessarily call a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old homemakers, but they're participants in it. They are participating every day in the making of our home.
In perhaps the best post from that web forum I talked about in the intro, one dad commented, "As a stay-at-home dad for the past 12 years, I was on the phone the other day with my friend, the stay-at-home dad of 9 years, and I told him I was bringing back dignity to the word homemaker. He went on and on about websites and marketing and the like, and I told him no, that defeated the whole purpose. I meant to bring dignity to homemaker simply by being a homemaker, not making an entrepreneurial endeavor out of it. I used to like house spouse, but the novelty of that is worn off. Why invent house spouse when homemaker is already gender neutral?" Our third option is stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad. The term stay-at-home mom cropped up in the 80s and gained popularity in the 90s as a way to differentiate them from moms who chose to work outside the home. Herein lies the problem for me. It artificially polarizes the two types of moms, especially at a time when the distinction is blurring. My friend Scott Lunt doesn't like or use the term stay-at-home dad. He says, "It seems a little too simple or dismissive, mainly because that's not all I do." Many moms and dads, including myself, stay home with their kids but also work a side gig. And because of technology that didn't even exist in the 80s, many work in home offices and become work-at-home moms or dads. Now that's confusing. With all this nuance, it feels like we're finally outgrowing all-or-nothing distinctions like stay-at-home mom and working mom, although the crazy web forum I mentioned at the beginning of this episode proves that some animosity and polarization still exists. Here are 5 more reasons I don't love the term stay-at-home mom. 1, by pitting it as the opposite of working moms, it insinuates that stay-at-home mom isn't working hard. Number 2, it sounds like I'm a shut-in who never leaves the house, As a noun, the term stay-at-home, as in he or she is a stay-at-home, means someone who does not like to go to parties or events outside the home and is considered boring, according to the Cambridge Dictionary. Number 3, it's kind of long and clunky. 4, adding just one comma turns it into a command. Stay at home, Mom. Number 5, the acronym for stay-at-home dad is literally SAD, S-A-H-D. However, one of my greatest joys in life is to find people with the opposite opinion from me. So I was delighted when I discovered that Brooke Romney, who we heard from earlier, prefers to be called a stay-at-home mom. Here's Brooke again.
I was a stay-at-home mom for most of my kids' childhood, and only in the last year and a half would I consider myself a part-time working mom. And I work mostly from home, but I'm also out of the home at times, whether I'm speaking or at meetings or, things like that. And so I've had to be away from the home a lot more. And it's actually made me love the term stay-at-home mom and just feel so grateful for the time that I was able to do that. I feel like it's a privilege for anyone to be able to stay home with their kids. And I know that privilege also comes with a lot of sacrifice, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the chance that I got to have the title of stay-at-home mom. I stay home with my kids and I help create a really engaging and inspiring life for them. And I was able to do a lot of that for myself in the process. I have no problem with the term stay-at-home mom. I love it.
This is something I never thought of, but I love it, and it makes me rethink my biases against the term stay-at-home mom. My friend Whitney Thomas recognized that the term stay-at-home mom reflects a greater cultural shift from the home to the kids.
You ask our moms, what did you do? Generally, they would say, I was a housewife. They stayed home to take care of the house. And we identify ourselves as, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I stay home to take care of the kids. And we have become so child-focused. We've moved from, you were supposed to keep your house. So if anybody came by, your house was clean, you had dinner on the table. But we have shifted it now to be like, it's totally acceptable if you have homework all over the table, because the children have become the focus instead of the home being the focus.
I also recently came across a modification for the term stay-at-home mom that I really like, just removing the word stay and calling yourself an at-home mom. I saw this in the description for the Mom Voice podcast, and I really like it. And then there's Adrienne Cardin's twist on the stay-at-home mom title.
It's interesting. I felt like I was a stuck-at-home mom at the beginning, like that life as a stay-at-home mom was happening to me. I had my first 2 kids 18 months apart, and they are curious, totally unboring children who kept me so busy. And yeah, I really became like a stuck-at-home mom. I felt like for a while I was just tethered to the house, and some of that was because of napping schedules and things. But I don't know if I would call myself a stay-at-home mom. I do stay home with my kids. I want to do everything. So, I have done jewelry design and called myself a jewelry designer. I have been a writer. I have been a graphic designer and a poet. I just want to have all these, I want to absorb all of these titles. So yes, I do stay home with my children. I am their primary caretaker, but because I'm so ambitious and want to do it all, I think I'm like a stay-at-home mom who wants to be a get-out-of-the-house mom. And I've sort of landed in a sweet spot between constant chaotic movement and being home. So I guess what I would brand that as is the stay-at-home mom.
Another thing the stay-at-home mom prefix has going for it is that it's the easiest of all the terms to apply to both moms and dads, which is important. And in a big breakthrough for all of us with this profession, LinkedIn recently added the job title stay-at-home mom and stay-at-home dad as one of the options in filling out an online resume. The 4th option is domestic goddess, domestic diva, and domestic engineer. In 1989, Roseanne Barr introduced the world to the term domestic goddess, one of many tongue-in-cheek euphemisms for the job of mothering, like domestic diva, domestic engineer, mother-in-chief. They're usually well-meaning, and some moms get away with them better than others. They can be funny in casual situations, but not necessarily what you want to put on your resume. The next option is home manager. This is a reasonable and maybe less arts and craftsy replacement for the word homemaker, but it does feel a bit impersonal. It is a good description for the job, though, and I like it better when paired with caregiver, as in, I'm a caregiver and home manager. This also seems like the best option for representing the job on a resume. It could launch a good conversation about how your experience might be relevant to the position you're applying to. The next two terms, home economist or family scientist, aren't really viable in real life, but I thought it was interesting to look at the academic equivalents. When colleges first started including home economics courses and allowing people to major in those subjects, it was a big coup for the legitimacy of household work. Eventually, though, it took on a negative or lightweight connotation, and most colleges have transitioned to the term family science instead. Unfortunately, neither translate well into job titles. It sounds weird or pretentious to tell another mom at the park that I'm a home economist or a family scientist. The eighth option is to say you're a full-time mom or a full-time dad. In my limited and unscientific poll, the most common term dad's used to refer to this job. Interestingly, though, this is not a popular term for moms at all. In fact, every mom I mentioned this title to objected to it on the grounds that all moms are full-time moms, whether they have another job or not. It's not a hat you hang up at the door of the office. The ninth option is professional mom. I briefly considered using this term because when taken literally, it could mean one who considers motherhood her primary profession. But it also feels like another euphemism or like you're trying too hard to make a point. And then we have simply mom. It might be kind of vague to answer I'm a mom when someone asks what you do, but it's enough. This is what my friend Rachel Beckstead writes on the form at the doctor's office.
When I'm talking to someone and they ask what I do, I say I'm a mom, or as my daughter calls it, a home mom. Most of the people I talk to, for the most part, they understand what a mom does, and those that truly understand what a mom does understands that it's not just a little job and it's not always easy.
Chantel Allen, a life coach at ChantelAllenCoaching.com and host of the Living and Loving Your Life podcast, agrees.
I think just even stating mom, like, I don't know why we've strayed away from just a mom. And, you know, you can put the little other things on there like, and I am a coach, or, and I do a podcast, whatever it is. But why is it so bad just to state I'm a mom instead of it being that we have to qualify it for something else? Like, and it is going to be different for every single person. I think that's what's so beautiful about it is everybody's job description of a mom is going to be more catered to the place that they're at in their lives. Maybe they are working full time and a mom. But like you said, you're never not a mom once you've become a mom.
The danger with using mom here is the tendency to say just a mom. Celeste Davis, a beautiful writer, fell into this trap.
I used to say, I just stay at home. That's what I used to say.
Including the jest?
But yeah, it's a hard question. It's a hard thing in our society right now because it is true that stay-at-home moms are not really that valued, and people aren't really like when you are meeting a bunch of people at a dinner party and everyone has really interesting careers and occupations, and they come to you and you say mom, like no one's like, wow, tell me more about that.
This is such a good point, and I've thought about it often since talking to Celeste about this. I think most people who struggle with a follow-up response when you say you're a stay-at-home mom are not just jerks who dismiss you as uninteresting. I think, like Celeste said, they just struggle to continue the conversation because it's an occupation that tells them nothing about you or your interests. Most other job titles give a natural segue into a follow-up question. Oh, you're a doctor or lawyer? What's your specialty? Or, oh, you're a teacher? What grade do you teach? I'll never forget my third grade teacher. If you say you're a stay-at-home mom, I guess the obvious follow-up question would be to ask about your kids. But no one wants to get cornered into an hour-long conversation complete with pictures and braggy stories of little people they'll probably never meet. And you don't want to talk about your kids on your night out either. Beyond platitudes about the importance of motherhood or how hard the job is, there's no natural cue for a follow-up question. So my new MO is to talk about both my job and my interests, something I want to talk about and that gives a clue into who I am. I'm a stay-at-home mom and a writer. I'm a homemaker and a podcaster. I'm a mom and a cyclist or musician or a hiking enthusiast. Which brings us to the last option we're going to talk about. You can also just say something else. When someone asks what we do, we don't have to answer with work. Why are we so focused on how people work and make money anyway? How much more interesting would it be if instead of asking what do you do when we meet someone, we ask what do you like to do? I've actually started doing this and it's way more interesting and tells you a lot more about the person you're getting to know. Maybe we can start a movement and I'll start opening with this conversation starter instead. But you don't have to wait for people to ask the right question. You can just interpret the question, what do you do, as what do you like to do, and answer accordingly. Don't let imposter syndrome get in the way here. You don't have to earn money doing something or even be very proficient in something to claim it. If you like to paint, claim the title of painter. If you like to build things out of wood, call yourself a woodworker. And if you write poetry like Adrienne Carden, by all means, call yourself a poet.
I felt really uncomfortable calling myself a poet for a long time. I would say, oh, I write poetry, but I wouldn't give myself the label of poet because I thought, I haven't earned this. Like, I'm not published in the New Yorker or whatever big magazine I felt would validate me as a poet. And I struggled with that for a long time. I would just say, I write poetry. I have been published technically, but I felt really uncomfortable with that label. And I met this chef. I was working on doing some branding. I also do graphic design. So I was doing some design for the chef who was launching a TV show. And I was sort of chatting with him ahead of time and saying, you know, how did you get started in cooking and how were you interested in this? And he said, I have no formal background. I did not go to culinary school. And he was having some of the same imposter syndrome, I think, that maybe I had been feeling. And he said, what I decided to do was go to this party where I would debut myself as a chef for the first time. So his solution was so beautifully simple. He bought a chef's jacket and he got his name embroidered on it. And he showed up to the party with his chef's name written across the lapel of his jacket. And all of a sudden he saw himself as a chef and became a chef. I guess. I mean, and he has a TV show. He is a chef. He caters and has a TV show. Anyway, that was his turning point, was deciding to label himself.
I love this image of just putting on the jacket. I hope it helps you think of what jacket, real or metaphorical, you can put on. Adrienne is getting more and more comfortable in her poet's jacket, or maybe it's more of a turtleneck. In fact, you can hear Adrienne's poetry for yourself in episode 71, How Adrienne Collaborates with Her Great-Grandmother. So my intent when I started researching for this episode was to find one fabulous answer, a new term or a revitalized old term that we could all proudly adopt. But I suppose all this research has mostly helped me come around to my mom's way of thinking. Maybe it doesn't matter all that much what my job is called. Maybe it's fine to have lots of options for different situations. In fact, maybe it's kind of cool that there isn't one term that can adequately encompass everything I do, because I get to just describe myself however I want. Thank you so much for listening to the How She Moms podcast and for being part of this community. There are so many other ways for you to connect and hopefully also contribute. I share tips and ideas regularly on Instagram and Facebook at How She Moms, and we also have a Facebook group that you can join, which is the main place for more philosophical discussions about the ideas I'll be discussing on future episodes of the podcast. It's also one of the best ways for you to contribute to future episodes. You can find past episodes and other resources at howshemoms.com. I have big plans for revamping my site this fall, so stay tuned for that. And you can always just email me directly at whitney@howshemoms.com. Special thanks to my own wonderful mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.